Hello again. Hello, all music lovers. I am super thrilled to have you all join us for another electrifying episode of the Dock and Roll webinar series. To all our rocking regulars, welcome back. And to our fresh faces, for some context, at this show, we are going to be jamming with some of the leading drone solution providers and value added resellers from all across the globe to share their chart topping insights and experiences of deploying and operating the DJI Dock for various applications. During our last show, we went full throttle on how DJI Dock is revving up the engines in asset operation and maintenance, particularly in the energy industry. This episode is available on flightnow.com/webinars, so make sure you check them out when you find time. Today, we are back with another headliner to discuss the role of autonomous drone technology in security operations and how DJI Dock and FlightNow can help improve the efficiency of security patrols and threat response. So, without further ado, please welcome our special guest for this act, Ben Shirley. Ben is a former Royal Military Police senior non commissioned officer with extensive operational experience obtained from deployments in Northern Ireland, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Over his 13-year career in the British Army, his work included one of the earliest forms of aerial surveillance using the rapidly extendable mass systems, which was to later develop into a passion for uncrewed aircraft systems. Later in his career, Ben was deployed as a close protection team leader for the senior British military representative in the Middle East and a security advisor to a multinational contingent, a deployment for which he was awarded the United States Army Commendation Medal. Ben left the British Army in 2016, joining Colena Limited, trading as Heligai, one of the most senior and respected UAS and training services providers in the UK. Ben began his career as a training instructor and was later promoted to head of training and again as training development manager. In his role, Ben has extensively delivered UAS training to UK emergency services, enterprises, and defense organizations across the country. That is some biography, Ben. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Likewise, it is a pleasure to have you here too. I'd also like to shine the spotlight on my colleague and today's gig partner, Achal. He wears the hat of Director of Business Development at Flightbase, and today he is going to walk you through on how FlightNow is turning up the tempo in automating drone operations for security patrols and response. Before I pass it over, please note that this session is being recorded and we are going to be publishing it online soon. At the end of the session, we are going to open the house for a round of Q&A. So please type in your questions in the Q&A tab and we'll answer them at the end of the session. With that, Ben, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. And just to reiterate, thank you very much for having me. It's a great pleasure to be asked to come and speak during this webinar. So I guess to kick us off then, the first thing I want to mention, even before jumping into the slide deck, is there is probably a bit of a misconception about drones and autonomy within the security industry. They are not, and I want to make this point very clear from the outset, we are not looking to implement this technology to replace any person. Docks and unmanned aircraft systems are there to complement existing security personnel and existing security systems. So straight off the bat, I just want to make that point very clear. Second, just to jump in, for those who haven't heard of our organization before, even though the introduction was very clear, yes, we are one of the earliest forms of what we call now a recognized assessment entity within the United Kingdom, those that are privileged to be approved by the UK Civil Aviation Authority to deliver training. But there's a whole lot more to our business as well, including technical support services, counter UES, research and development, and lots of other things. But we certainly, our history goes back a long way from our very early relationships with DJI. We've been instrumental in bringing them into the UK and supporting them throughout. So it's a great pleasure to have been awarded the first dock in the United Kingdom. We hold that in very high regard, and we've had a lot of fun and challenges with DJI Dock so far. So for those who haven't had a chance yet to explore the concept of DJI Dock, just a very quick walkthrough about the platform. So it is a ultimately robust drone-in-a-box solution which houses the DJI Matrice 30 series of unmanned aircraft. Integrated into the dock is a weather station, which includes an anemometer, a security camera, and also a rain sensor gauge. It has an automatic charging feature, which means when the aircraft lands, it will charge the aircraft around 20 to 80% in approximately 25 minutes, depending on conditions. It's also very robust in that it can operate in temperatures down as low as negative 35 degrees up to a height of 50 degrees. And you may have seen DJI published a video recently which showed these things really being put through their paces and testing that ingress protection 5.5 rating. Integrated into the actual solution is also a backup battery, although it does need power and networking. And it also benefits from cloud management system. And this is why we're here today to talk about the integration within the security sector, but also the integration with FlytNow. So a quick video to show Dock in action. This is actually one of the first deployments that we did with Dock when we got it out for commission testing. The unit, as you can see, once the dock doors open, it releases the charging mechanism, those rods which are attached to the landing gear. The weather station there actively monitoring the environmental conditions. My colleague there is just for demonstration purposes plugged into the dock there doing some configuration, but actually the whole point of Dock is that it can be flown via the cloud. Now, we're going to talk about the regulations specifically to the UK and the controls for that a little bit later in the presentation. The landing, everyone wants to see the landing. How accurate is it? I can assure you it is absolutely bob on. And out of all the testing we did, it was really surprisingly accurate. Before those charging rods then replace into the landing gear, it rotates the props and then uses the mechanism on the dock doors there to close them. So how does Dock really integrate into the security industry? Well, first of all, I'm going to outline the 10 principles of crime prevention. I'm former crime reduction, as it was called at the time, crime reduction officer. It was later changed to crime prevention. And the 10 principles really, which are used throughout industry, are things like, or factors like target hardening, target removal, reducing or removing the means to commit, access control, increasing the chances of being caught, environmental change, rule setting, surveillance, reducing the payoff, and finally, deflecting offenders. These are the 10 principles on which we build the fundamental concepts of security. And how does Dock actually relate to these? Well, it doesn't cover all of them, but certainly it covers the vast majority, well over 50% there. In terms of target hardening, the Dock in itself, or drones in general, actually are well known throughout the criminal world. Okay, with these new assets which are being deployed, there's being some really good social media coverage by the UK emergency services and international security organisations as well, who essentially inject fear, the fear of surveillance, and that is the presence of an unmanned aircraft. Can get a very similar perspective to that which you may have seen from the police helicopters, where it provides a aerial perspective of an incident which can actually prove extremely effective. It can also be used for circumstances around access control, but access monitoring as well. So it means that what we call pattern of life can be monitored in terms of busy ingress and egress locations. Increasing the chances of being caught, well, that pretty much explains itself in that the presence of an unmanned aircraft with a number of sensors, for example, on the Matrice 30T, we have an optical wide, optical zoom, and a thermal sensor present on the aircraft, as well as a laser rangefinder, really provides a wealth of tools there to help any security professional to maintain a suitable surveillance. Environmental change is actually one which isn't fairly often discussed, in that a drone can be used to assist in the installation of a closed circuit television system. Essentially, by using a drone, you can designate the type of environment which the cameras will be situated, and also the obstructions and field of view which will be used for that camera system. When you then go and develop, there potentially, whilst best efforts are that there should be no black spots or gaps within that CCTV footage, that's really where these unmanned aircraft systems come into their own and can fill those gaps. Surveillance, as I've already mentioned, that's a pretty standard one, but also then deflecting offenders. It's that knowledge that there are additional systems which may not be um, uh, uh, stationary units where CCTV, you can conduct reconnaissance and identify where those cameras are covering. With a drone, you absolutely have no idea where it will be or where it could be. So that's a little bit about the principles of crime prevention. Moving on now to soft technologies and hard technologies. The dock is essentially its own hard technology, but how does that actually plug in to some of the fundamental soft technologies which are being used in the security services? Well, I've already mentioned environmental design, and that can have an impact in the actual physical site infrastructure itself. We can also do things like crime data mapping, where we can start to build a diagram of the type of environment in which the unmanned aircraft will be deployed and how that interlinks with existing security protocol. Intelligence gathering, everything that we do now in the security industry is intelligence led. In that it used to be the case of you would utilize your existing knowledge and experience, but now we can actually analyze specific data streams in order to be more effective with our resourcing. Policies and procedures. When it comes to the development of ongoing security procedures, policies, and protocol, really the presence of an unmanned aircraft fills a number of different gaps that we're going to talk about a little bit later on. Situation awareness is ultimately the end game for an unmanned aircraft. It provides a wealth of knowledge to commanders who can make various decisions which they couldn't previously with an aerial perspective of a large area. So what type of environments would Dock be most suited to? Well, here's a short list, although I must caveat this to say that Dock can be placed in any infrastructure environment, but more specifically, locations like airports, ports, rail infrastructure, centers, financial institutes, pharmaceutical facilities, prison and detention centres, and events and demonstrations are really some of the key locations where we foresee Dock being most suitable in the security industry. As I mentioned before, although Dock does have a set of specific requirements for installation, essentially most of these locations will have everything it needs in order to be situated. So the ultimate question, I mentioned it earlier, is where do we currently sit in relation to the actual deployment of Dock? Now, I have to apologize. I'm going to speak very specifically about the United Kingdom because that is my specialist area, although a lot of this does apply intercontinental as well. So the efficiencies which can be saved from automation are very much well known today. Essentially, the presence of technology in a variety of industries, everyone recognizes the efficiencies that could be saved. But where we sit at the moment in terms of autonomy and automation actually is relatively low. We don't yet have the full picture of the efficiencies in which these sort of technologies can truly benefit us. Where we currently sit is between automation and autonomous. The difference being the level of involvement of the human element. Where we sit in highly automated is very much a process where the individual is responsible for loading data and controlling the flight of the unmanned aircraft whilst it's flying on an automated route or mission. The remote pilot, the individual who's monitoring that aircraft, is still very much in the loop. Where we hope to be in the future is very much a level of autonomous operations. Now, this is where the system and the technologies will integrate into a variety of other systems and sensors in order to determine its own flight path, whilst maintaining the same level of safety which we currently enjoy with a remote pilot on the sticks. So really, as we start to move towards these concepts, we know what the end game is. It doesn't take a big brain to realize that the future is unmanned automation. And so I'm sure we've all seen films like Back to the Future, where the skies are full of these machines doing various jobs and missions, which probably go from the very mundane to the very complex. And we started to see a lot of that come into play already. But the regulation which surrounds that is really about learning the lessons in order to get us to that end game. And it's not an easy task. So what type of operations can we achieve with Dock? Well, bearing in mind what I've just said, autonomous sits right at the bottom there. But Dock And the FlytNow software enables a range of different types of operations which can be conducted. Now, these range from automated, and you'll note after every single one of these there is the word monitored, because they do currently need to be monitored. The beyond visual line of sight requirements are still very much in the evolution phase. And so at present, certainly here in the United Kingdom, the presence of an unmanned aircraft does require, for the majority, remote pilots remain visual line of sight and also have the ability to intervene in the flight at any time. So the automated side really comes down to the different types which can be conducted, either via pre-planning an operation while supervising it, manual control, which involves the command unit physically being present there. You can also control the aircraft via the cloud, and certainly via FlytNow enables, and I don't want to tread on Achil's toes here about his discussions around the software, but you can also have hybrids of the two, where relative control remains automated via the software with manual intervention capable. We also have automated AI, and I want to just delay answering or speaking about that one just for a couple of slides, because we're going to delve deeper into that one. So how can Dock actually be used for proactive site security planning? Well, as I've already mentioned, the field of view assurance and CCTV blind spot management is really one of the functions, one of the key functions to the early establishment of Dock and the unmanned aircraft on a site. It means that when establishing a new location, such as a construction site, for example, these mobile CCTV cameras, which are normally loaded onto vehicle trailers, can be adequately positioned in complement to the system. Obviously, it costs a lot of money to hire these systems and the infrastructure which is required, and also the constant evolution of a construction site means you constantly have to make these adjustments and conduct additional planning into the site security plan. The proximity or the location of an unmanned aircraft can stay relatively static. However, the unmanned aircraft obviously can move freely around the site and fulfill any gaps that are created. We can also look at strategic locations. Strategic locations are any potential points of weakness in the existing security infrastructure, as well as obstacle and obstruction planning. When it comes to compliance and privacy, obviously this is something that does need to be considered. Certainly the proximity to locations such as residential estates is still a concern for many individuals, especially when it comes to any sort of CCTV systems, and that includes the use of drones. We can then start to look at how we can actually use the drone in a defensive manner by designating things like patrol routes and the regularity in which they're conducted, either in a covert or overt fashion. If you can imagine, it's quite easy if you were to schedule a drone to conduct a predetermined mission flight around a site. It can quickly be identified that every day at 3 o'clock, that drone's going to take off, do a couple of flights around the circuit, and then land and begin its charging cycle before doing that over and over again. So it's really about using this technology in a manner which is still very much aligned to the rest of the security procedures that are in use throughout that site. It can also finally be used for instant response planning. Obviously, major incidents do occur, and there's always a plan on what to do in the event of those incidents occurring. The drone can be used not only to monitor the incident itself, but also as part of the pre-planning, the work that goes in ahead of that to ensure that the policies in place are suitable for the type of site that the system is going to be deployed. I do apologise. I just had a notification pop up. I'll turn those off. So perimeter security, of course, most people think of perimeter security. Yep, the drone will fly around the perimeter of the location. But how exactly is this beneficial? Well, as I've already mentioned, proactive patrols have that dissuading effect on those that will seek to breach the security. We can also conduct regular and irregular patrol patterns, whereas the time is defined well in advance, right through to a dynamic patrol. And that, again, I don't want to tread too much on toes for the future of what's to come on the software side, but certainly that is a consideration factor with any security personnel: the regularity of the patrols and exactly the order in which they are conducted. You'll also note that in some circumstances, security personnel do have to conduct a patrol assurance, whereby they might physically scan an infrastructure tag to not only validate that they have checked the piece of infrastructure for security, but also that the checks have been done and record that for audit purpose. Well, obviously, the benefits to using an unmanned aircraft is that all of the information, the flight route, the times, are well recorded within the software and can be recalled via the cloud by anyone at any time, as well as, of course, live monitoring. Drones can also be used for infrastructure assurance and condition monitoring. So whilst they are primarily there for detection of intruders, they can be there for asset assurance. So making sure that things like security fences are still very much intact, and that security infrastructure is in a good condition, including other jobs which can be performed simultaneously. We can also use them for asset accounting. One of the major concerns with any site is the theft of any infrastructure, any equipment that's going to be used. Certainly, when we talk about construction sites, it's a common occurrence where things like copper wire, for example, will quickly go missing if it's identified, because it's high value and it's often left unattended even during hours of darkness. So the presence of an unmanned aircraft can be used for that purpose too, where it can physically check that the asset remains in place, untouched, and prevents thievery. Finally, the ground sign capability as well. There's what we call the unseen perspective, whereas a person who is conducting a foot security control, security patrol, might not necessarily be able to see anything using non-visible light, whereas a drone can use the thermal camera to identify potentially a person who is lying in wait to wait for the security patrol to pass before then attempting to break in. The presence of the drone and the thermal camera, it actually loans itself very well, because, for example, a person lying on the ground, and if they move positions to a different location, they can actually leave quite a unique thermal heat signature behind, which the drone's thermal camera can then pick up on. So that's just a couple of examples of how it can be used for perimeter security. So what are the specific benefits of using this sort of technology versus that of standard unmanned aircraft systems? Well, to do with the responsive nature of Dock, it's a very simple concept. Dock takes off from A, it flies to C. It's very efficient. It does that in a very straight linear flight path if desired, or alternatively, a very bespoke polygon flight can be enabled. Security personnel, however, they of course can go straight from their location to the scene, A to C. However, what we do expect is that by placing personnel into a security situation, it is of course of a higher risk by comparison to that of deploying an unmanned aircraft. How that differs from those that are currently using unmanned aircraft, of course, you need to get the individual, the remote pilot, the security individual, from their current point to the launch point where you're going to take the aircraft off, and then of course the aircraft then needs to transition to the scene. So by cutting out that middle position, we can increase the efficiency of the response quite dramatically. So some of the existing systems which are integrated either into the unmanned aircraft itself or into the software, the FlytNow software is extremely good at some of these. Others are, I believe, still to be integrated. But essentially, person detection using the optical sensor and likewise with the thermal sensor provides the ability for the user operating via the cloud to potentially obtain data which they may not be or which may not be specifically visible to them. Prime example is the human brain can only process a certain amount of information at any given time, and so if the individual is looking for a specific object in amongst a very complex scene, then sometimes the AI can actually do better than the human eye. We can also integrate systems such as facial recognition as well as vehicle detection, of course, which can be complemented with systems including automatic number plate recognition or ANPR. Object tracking as well can take place where physically the aircraft might stay still tracking an object from left to right, right to left, or alternatively the unmanned aircraft can continue on its mission whilst concurrently tracking objects. As previously mentioned as well, asset tags can also can go through a process of image recognition where we can essentially scan asset tags. And also there's a lot of AI in place nowadays which largely automates the process of fault detection. So when I mentioned earlier about infrastructure damage, that there are systems which are available which can actually identify these without necessarily a human identifying it. We can also conduct things like volumetric assessment. Again, this comes down to asset management and security, where we can conduct a volumetric assessment on a heap pile, and it can give you, or the model that's generated from that can give you a volumetric assessment to assure that none of that material has been removed. So what are the main benefits then of using these systems? Well, most people find that they're quite evident. Certainly environmental impact as we move to this net zero approach to our business, then drones contribute largely to this process. You can imagine that any organization who could find a use case for unmanned aircraft to replace things like diesel generators or other power systems, vehicles more specifically, then the environmental impact is very much reduced. Likewise, similarly, the cost efficiencies obtained from using unmanned aircraft systems always comes up because you are not simply replacing individuals, as I mentioned right at the start, but there are many efficiencies which can be linked to many aspects of the role, especially in security. Resource efficiencies, of course, as I mentioned, and increased situation awareness is one of the main benefits, both for the individual but also from a command and control perspective. The deployment speed as well. I'm going to show you a slide in just a couple of minutes, which is a concept of Dock being used in the security concept, which shows just the comparison against standard security deployments. Dynamically as well, the risk assessment, which can be produced from the data obtained by an unmanned aircraft, means that you are not subjecting persons to immediate risk from response to a security situation. The unmanned aircraft gives everyone the foresight to be able to see exactly what's happening so that they know what to expect on arrival at scene. So how can it benefit specifically, as in Dock, how can that benefit over conventional UES? Well, as I mentioned before, hasty deployment is one of the key functions of Dock. The aircraft can take off and begin its flight mission in a little under a minute. We can also set predetermined flight plans. We can have specific response routes and locations pre-planned via the software, which will enable the operator simply to select the location, but this can also be automated. The drone will always find an optimal position in relation to the event. The aerial perspective gives a significant advantage over standard CCTV or ground perspective. The data is also absolute. It's always a case that the sensors which are equipped on the unmanned aircraft provide the operator with a true-to-life representation of what's happening on that scene. Of course, we always talk about the flight readiness of the system. The drone can live in the box, keeping itself ready to deploy, both in terms of battery, but also the readiness of the system for temperature. And so it's a key benefit to always have that asset immediately available. It'll also find the most efficient flight route, A to B, straight line of sight, and so the system can really just maintain its most optimum flight route to get from A to B in the quickest possible method. And some of these aircraft can fly upwards of sort of 35 to 40 miles an hour. Rapid sensor functionality is where previously the operator would have to activate certain AI-based functions or image functions on the system, whereas with the implementation of cloud-based software like FlytNow, this functionality can be assigned as soon as the aircraft arrives at a location based on sort of waypoints. We also have the absence of the human factors associated with the operation of unmanned aircraft. We know with security personnel, this human element of the system can start to depreciate as a night draws on. We start to suffer the effects of tiredness, which will result in less than optimum human performance, whereas these systems very much using these automated functions and systems can very much alleviate that. So before I finish, I just wanted to bring up a conceptual case study for this conceptual site, which just shows the workflow associated with what happens in the event of a security incident. So in this example, an alarm has been activated, which is linked via API to the FlytNow software. Once that location is fed into the software, what we can start to see is the system ready itself and load that data into the machine, then getting the aircraft ready to deploy, loading that mission in before the aircraft then takes off. It will then fly a straight route to the location of the incident and arrive on scene, during which time security personnel can begin to make their way to the system. So by comparison, on average, a response might take 3, 4, 5 minutes. And that's the time where those security personnel will be receiving the information, gathering their equipment up, even if they are on what are called a quick reaction force, and then physically making their way around the site in order to arrive on scene, whereas the dock can be there well in advance of this process. So that brings me to the end of my section. Thank you very much for listening. Welcome any questions towards the end of the webinar.
Thank you so much, Ben, for this excellent presentation. I have to emphasize on the formatting. It has been top notch. Security is, like you mentioned, truly a standout use case for autonomous drone tech, given the clear benefit it provides from eliminating blind spots to enhancing incident response and object detection, of course. Also, as you mentioned, the ability to define operations based on user preference, like whether it is fully automated, manual, hybrid approach, it just simplifies the entire adoption process. So we are definitely in for exciting times ahead. With this, I would now like to invite Achal to talk about FlytNow. Welcome to the stage, Achal.
Hey, hi everybody. Thank you, Vaishali. Thank you, Ben, for that exciting session. That was a great insights and the way you structured things in a way where coming from how the crime prevention is done and how drone dogs should be adopted was really insightful. With that, I would, of course, want everybody to participate. We want to have this more conversation going. So in case you have any questions, feel free to put in the chat box. If you have any thoughts on top of what Ben has shared, feel free to do so. So I'm here to talk about more about software. So let me just go ahead and share my screen and see if I can just quickly put it up. While I do that, you can use the chat box to put your questions. And Vaishali, you can let me know if the screen is visible.
It is. It is up right now.
Okay, great, great. So, yeah, let's talk about the aspects of software which are required to deploy these docking stations specifically for security use cases, as well as the things that we have been seeing in the industry, where how people are adopting these different drones docking stations for security use cases. So, this is where FlytNow as a software platform comes into the picture, where enterprises who are looking to automate their security have assistance to their security personnel, reduce their risk, danger. One gentleman rightly pointed out in terms of avoidance of unplanned encounters with intruders. This is where a software comes into the picture, where you can have all that real-time situation awareness. So we're going to talk about that in upcoming slides and how FlytNow is enabling all of that. So let's talk about the use cases, right, in security. So first of all, of course, all these use cases are now becoming beyond visual line of sight, because the whole reason to deploy dock is you can send the drone yeah, beyond visual line of sight. The regulations are catching up, but that's the go-to area where you want to go with these docking stations, where you want to send the drone really quick. Meanwhile, a security person is reporting there, or you want to get the situation awareness before planning a response to that kind of an incident. So let's look at the first one, where we are seeing a huge adoption, and Ben correctly shared in the last slide was the event and alarm based response. Now, security is a pretty much horizontal field. It could be securing your community, it could be facility, a factory, it could be a asset like a power plant, a substation, construction site, or it could be even linear assets like railway track or pipeline, gas pipelines. People have a lot of incidents on railway tracks for any kind of theft or any kind of accident which would cause a huge havoc of things that could happen on railway. Similar with like gas pipelines, where there could be leakages or there could be theft that could happen. Now, this is where integration with these event based or alarm based systems with the software can allow you to respond really quick. So you have the dog sitting on your side. You could have multiple dogs along the side or a vertical asset. And now you can integrate these alarms with FlightNow software. And as soon as that alarm goes off, the drone will automatically take off, take the suggested path, the best path to reach there, and give you all the live situational awareness. And this could be fully automated, where as the alarm comes, it could be quickly deployed within few seconds, and the drone can reach, depending upon how far the location is. Yeah, the right drone could respond to that. So alarm based triggers are, of course, has been one of the expensive things in the security industry, because even if you look at a lot of bigger sites or bigger assets, there are compliances where you would have to respond to these alarms in a given time, and it takes a huge amount of effort or resources. You would have to send right people, have vehicles ready, and of course you have to pay them up and make sure that they are able to perform in efficient way. Now with the dogs, it becomes really easy because the drone reaches there first, and now you can plan your response according to that. How severe is a damage? How dangerous it is, right? Where is safe to send a unarmed human there, or you need somebody special from police department to go there and train to respond to that kind of threat. So alarms are something which would become very common with dogs. It is already becoming in one of the top use cases, where you can respond to that really quick with the docking station, which was very difficult with just the drone and a pilot, because then you cannot have pilot on the standby all the time, which is practically not possible. Now, the second one is schedule patrol. So this is something, once you have the dock, you would like to continuously patrol that area for security. Now, it could be construction site where you're flying every hour, every week, depending upon how frequently you need it. And the way you schedule your things on the calendar, you are able to schedule those kind of missions in FlightNow. And then the specific drone can take off, go to particular mission, perform multiple missions, and collect that data stored on your private server, and that could be post processed for further intelligence, or reports could be generated for the authorities, which could be submitted to them. So as I was currently explaining, just explaining about how it works, where there could be CCTV cameras, there could be alarms, that could be alarms in a way where there are motion sensors, that could be fiber optic running, which is maybe just listening to the sound. There could be acoustic sensor, it could be vibration sensors. Different sensors are being deployed in security industry, and these are pretty much common. Depending upon what infrastructure site you have some kind of sensors, cameras, AI detections already there. We can integrate with that system. As soon as the alarm comes, as I said, the drone could quickly respond to that. And in your video management system, you can get all the updates through the API integrations, which we're going to talk about in the coming slides. So let's take a quick look at this quick video, which demonstrates how FlightNow performs in terms of getting alarm. So what you see here, let me see if I can pump up the quality a little bit so you guys can see it more clearly. We would, of course, have this video online, so you can always go back and refer. But here you see the alarm dashboard on the right. And you can integrate multiple alarms on your side. You can set a manual response or an automated response. Manual response will just give you a notification, and then the remote operator would have to send it. It is totally dependent upon the regulations, what is allowed in your geography, but it could be fully automated as well. And as soon as that alarm comes in, you'll see the notification real quick. So you can see the notification coming there. We have the drone live on the dashboard, and now the drone would be launched, or you could also have a manual intervention to abort it or send the drone, depending upon what kind of situation you have or the SOPs that you have for that site. And the drone would quickly take off from the dock and go to that location. You get the live situational awareness. You can, of course, take the manual control to move the drone there, zoom in. It's being recorded and stored, so you have all the forensics or the data available to review it later. And once the mission is done, the drone would come back and land. So this could be done with a fleet of drones as well, not just one drone and dog. Yeah, depending upon your size of the site, this could be planned in such a way. So, and once the mission is done, as I was talking about, you can have the entire mission logs. So you just can check where it flew and what was location, and get all that data here. So let me skip that part and we can go to the next slide. In case you have any questions, feel free to put it there. Happy to take after the presentation. So now let's move forward to the next bit, which is related to the BVLOS aspect we just touched upon, where we were already deploying these systems. We of course have a bouquet of all the tools which could help you get BVLOS waivers, and our team can assist you with that. Let's look at more apps and integrations in terms of the security industry. How these ready apps, one of the apps we just saw, like alarm integration apps, but there are extensive APIs available to automate the workflow. And then we'll talk about the next two topics in the coming slides as well. But let's jump into the apps and integrations. So one of the most popular one is integration with a video management system. Uh, all the organizations that we have spoken to who are adopting drone dogs already have a system where they are managing their CCTV cameras, they have video analytics, they have alarms, cameras, encoders, sensors, things that we have been talking in the few previous slides. Now, we provide those kind of APIs so you can integrate your existing security system with drone dogs. So your business workflow remain the same. Now you have an add-on advantage, and you have an extra tool, which is the drone plus dog, the DJI Dock, which could be deployed for your security operations. And you can leverage these APIs to do custom integrations, get live video feed, get more analytics on that, integrate with other sensors as well, and have a seamless workflow for your business. I'll quickly show you a quick video here. So this is a quick demonstration with a popular software called Milestone X Protect. So it's primarily used by majority in the market in terms of security. So here is a concept demo where you can get the live video feed, you can get the basic controls also. So there have been a lot of customers who have been asking that, hey, we already have an interface, right? We want to use that. Our security personnel are trained on that, and we don't want to have another training done on some other software. Now, this is where APIs come into the picture, where you can integrate that data with the existing system. So you see here is a Milestone. I'll fast forward it in the interest of time. This, of course, video is available online where you can check in more detail. But you can get the live video feed. You can, of course, get the basic controls that you need to train your security personnel on. You can, of course, have detections like AI detection. So we quickly detected an object here, and it's showing it right on the screen. All these kind of integrations could be done with the VMS. Existing features could be used throughout with the VMS systems. And of course, you can get all the thermal video camera feeds. So if you're using something like an M30T, which has a thermal camera, you can get those things if you're flying in a dense area or it's a nighttime kind of flight, you can get all of that. There have been few other drones which support loudspeakers as well. And you would have, of course, those integrations coming with DJI Dock as well in the future. So you'd be able to speak through a loudspeaker, either a pre-recorded message, or you can speak live. It'll quickly record and replay that so you can broadcast an audio to that particular area. So let's move on and look at the next one. Now, the other app that everybody has been talking about is I'm flying the drone, but of course I can't keep watching the video all the time, right? I could be flying multiple drones, and then I want the system to tell me what it is detected. So we've been working on the AI detection app primarily for security to detect people and cars. So in where that particular person should not be there or that vehicle should not be there, the system can track that and notify and keep that in logs. Now it helps again a security personnel while reviewing like tons of the videos where drone could be flying every hour. They can review and get that specific data where if something was noticed at that particular date, time, location, in that particular video or in that flight that drone took. So object detection is on the way where you can have those kind of integration done. We have been already deploying that for few enterprise customers. It could be also configured with your own AI modules. So of course, being a platform, we provide again those APIs where you can integrate any specific applications that you have been already using. A lot of security folks, public safety folks use license plate recognition, or they have specific apps that they have been already using to secure their premises. Those could be integrated as well through the APIs. Now let's jump to the main part again, the data security and compliance, right? So we spoke about how we do security, but where is your data, right? It is really, really critical because it could be very sensitive for a lot of customers. They could be in a very situation where the data cannot even go out of their premises, right? And how are we ensuring that? So next two part are going to talk about that, the data security compliance and the on-prem private cloud option. So the first one is, of course, the standard solution that we offer is meeting the industry compliance. So the compliance is underway where we're going to be SOC 2 and ISO 27001 and the GDPR compliant. So you'd have the industry standard compliance available. Plus you have all the control over your data. So we ensure that the data is stored on a private cloud. Even in a standard offering, you can integrate your own Amazon Web Services bucket where the data would be directly stored in your AWS account, and you can of course choose your own AWS storage in your own country or the nearby region where you're located. But of course, as the enterprises want to scale and they want more flexibility, there are more options available for them to deploy these different drone docking stations. Now, let's talk about that in more detail. And this is the last bit I want to focus on in this webinar. So we spoke about the security use case. Now we're talking about the data security aspect of it. But these are the flexible deployments options that we've been giving to our partners, to our customers as they want to deploy these DJI Docks. So first one that we've been seeing is a multi-tenant option. We'll talk about that. There is sole tenant options as well available. We'll discuss more in the coming slide. We'll talk about the on-prem hybrid, which is the best model to go for larger enterprises and folks who have been using cloud services, but in a more secure way. They have been going with this. And then there is, of course, an air gap system, which comes with the limited functionalities, but then it is for the customers who want a really air gap system where they don't want to access internet at all or very less internet available, and they want an on-premise kind of a deployment in total. So let's go to multi-tenant one and let's see some benefits and comparisons. So it could clear a better picture for you or for your customers. You'd be able to tell it much better. So the multi-tenant is very common. Any cloud solution that you use today, right? Maybe the one you have just logged in right now to see the webinar, or you use a Zoom call or something, you've been using a multi-tenant solution. It is, of course, really easy to set up, right? We are up and running really quick. In our case, if you have a DJI Dock, you can sign up, follow small steps, and under about 15 minutes, you'll be able to go and start flying. It's that easy. It's just available and you can quickly get started. We, of course, provide the private storage integration, so you can seamlessly integrate your private AWS bucket, as I was speaking in the last slide. So your data stays with you. You can cut off the access anytime, and FlytNow would not have that data access. It stays with you. Then, of course, as a multi-tenant solution, which is on public cloud, you have consistent maintenance and updates where you get fresh updates here, where benefit of all the continuous and expedite system upkeep. You get access to all the features. You have the industry standard compliance that we spoke about in the previous slide. You have hassle-free maintenance, so fully managed by experts from FlightBase. You don't have to care about anything. You just log in and do your operation. Rest of the things are taken care of, and it's easy to scale, right? So you have multiple sites, you have multiple people, you can scale your operation smoothly and effectively with the system. And of course, this is the most cost effective way because this deployed and used by multiple people. We have secured it through the different layers that we just spoke about, and it is one of the most cost effective solution that is available. But now, if you go one step further, there is a sole tenant solution. Now, this is for enterprises who want a mixture of not using a public solution, but still they don't want to manage any hardware, the on-prem server solution, because people who have done that, they have burned the fingers in that area. You need dedicated team to do all of that. Now, this is where a sole tenant system comes to the picture, where you have exclusive access to the private instance. So there is a dedicated instance in your geography running for you with only your user accounts, right? And then, of course, it increases the security. It is compliant to the data residency laws. It is there deployed in that country on that particular server. It is fully customizable and controllable, where it provides you full control over server configurations. You closely work with us and we help you scale that way. We integrate with other third-party applications as well, so it becomes much more configurable and customizable for you. It is, of course, scalable, where it's still on cloud, where flexibility to add or remove resources based on the application demands is really easy. The cost is, of course, slightly higher. So these are for specific enterprises who want that kind of a private instance running for them. So that's a sole tenant solution for you. The next one is on-prem hybrid. Now, this is where it starts getting more and more on-premise side, where you need to have a hardware on your site and you need to maintain that. Now, when I talk about hybrid, of course, this is something that all the SaaS solutions do in the market in terms of on-prem, where your metadata account data stays on a public cloud, but all the critical video data, right, the imagery data, the video data, flight data stays on your local server. So you could have your own private server, and of course that would provide you the highest data privacy with the live video streams. Media data stays within private network and never goes out. The latency reduces, of course. The other two solutions offer you ultra low latency, but this even goes to a top notch because you're not using cloud, you're using your on-premise server to get the data. So for very critical operations like traffic monitoring, or where you cannot afford to have any kind of a delay or any kind of a low time, this is the solution which is really useful. You of course get better streaming quality. So same way, the way you're getting latency, you're getting better streaming quality and precise. Well, really crucial for precise operations like reading the license plates and smaller characters and stuff like that becomes really easy with such kind of option. And then of course you have more data control over sensitive information, where it is the video imagery data is staying on premise, it's not going out. You would still need cloud access for your all the account activations, your telemetry, your basic operations there, but your data is staying with you and you're enjoying the best network latency as well as streaming quality for such kind of solution. Now, the last but not the least, of course, is the air gap system. Now, this is something has been designed for organizations where they have a dock on the rooftop and they're just sitting in that office. They are not sitting remotely, right? They're just sitting there and they want to get access to that kind of a data just on in their office. Now, this is where they would need to have the entire on-premise servers running in their office, and the system would be deployed there. And then, of course, it provides all the benefits of latency, delay-free. You're not dependent on the cloud. You have full control over the data, even the transmission and everything. You, of course, need an in-house IT support because you need to maintain those servers and ensure that everything's going great. So this is only recommended. The last two offerings are only recommended for the enterprises who have their own servers, have invested money to install that, as well as have IT specialists to handle that kind of stuff. And of course, it requires initial investment. So if you have the servers, if you don't have them, you have to deploy that. If you have them, then you would have to work closely with us, and we can help you deploy that on premise for superior control and security. The updates, of course, are a little bit critical there, but the real-time updates are not possible in this kind of solution. But a structured schedule could be done, and that is where we ensure that we are able to update that for you. And of course, the cost-wise, the last two solutions go on a higher bracket. So this is for large enterprises or looking to have such kind of systems on their side. So I hope I was able to give you more information, not just on the security use case, but from the data security aspect of it. Both of them go hand in hand because the data is really critical in every use case, but specifically in security, it's really sensitive. And this is where these kind of offerings come into the picture. So with that, I'll just open it up for Q&A. I hope you enjoyed all the information. Happy to take your feedback. I see a lot of comments coming in, so really excited to read those comments again. I'm back on the screen. I'll quickly pause my screen share. Just give me a moment. Yeah, and maybe Vishal, if you can put all of us on big 3 screen, then it'll be great. Everybody can see our faces. Great, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm open for all the questions.
Thank you, Achal. I will quickly, jump into the questions. We have a lot of questions, especially for Ben as well. Ben, the first question is, let me just check which one. How do you see, because you mentioned about a use case around this working in airports and prisons, so how do you see that happening? Like, are these areas going to really see the use of DJI Dock?
Yeah, just like any unmanned aircraft system, when it's operating specifically around an airport, it will be done under the supervision, the traffic service of an air navigation service provider. So air traffic control will be well aware of what's going on. As we start to move towards more scalable beyond visual line of sight operations, actually there will be the equivalent system of the traffic management system, which is in use, where drones will be visible to air traffic control throughout those. So they'll be well aware, and also will be, as drones, most of them actually don't need to actually fly that high. If you're talking about security or infrastructure inspections, then they'll either stay within sort of 30 meters, 100 foot of the terrain, or in close proximity to the surrounding infrastructure. Prisons, I can wholly understand. Yes, there probably would be a lot of concerns around a drone flying around a prison, but if they're there specifically employed by the prison, then there'll be a process in place to ensure that anyone visiting the prison is aware that there are authorized drones conducting security operations there, as well as in the future. When we start to look to things like remote ID and the public identification of unmanned aircraft, then there'll be systems in place where you can readily identify who is operating that drone and the legitimacy of that operation. Great question, though.
Thanks, Ben. We have a few questions around how capable is the dock to operate in inclement weather, because to have a realistic security system, the availability should be very high. So this is a question from Alberto. Maybe you could talk about the hardware bit, and then Achal can cover how we are ensuring it from the software side.
Yes, certainly, yeah. So from the hardware perspective, yes, Dock does have an ingress protection 5.5 rating, which the aircraft, the Matrice 30 or Matrice 30T inside, also has an IP55. So from a hardware perspective, the aircraft is very capable when it comes to ingress protection for precipitation. But also the anemometer, which is built into the dock itself, will ensure that it's within what's called the operational envelope, as in the technical capabilities of the aircraft, before letting it take off. That's really the hardware side, and obviously you've got the rain sensor as well. I know Actual's going to jump in now and talk about how FlytNow actually contributes to that whole workflow.
Right. Yeah, so correctly said, a lot of stuff is already there on the hardware, and you can fly in different kind of situation. There's actually a video available on FlightBase YouTube channel and from DJI, where how they have tested that solution in different kind of situations. So be it just heavy winds or rain or dust, particles. It could sustain different situations. But of course, there is a limit to it, and that is where we want to have more and more safe operations. And this is where we have a weather fail-safe kind of a module available in FlytNow, where depending upon the drone and the dock, and as this industry matures, there will be more drones and docks coming to picture, and depending upon what you're deploying, you can uh, configure that kind of a fail safe. So if the drone is not rated to fly above a certain threshold of the wind, or it is not recommended because of the regulatory permission, because this could cause a hazard in that particular area, even if the drone is rated, you would have to maybe mark it down so you don't reach that kind of a danger situation. So this is where we provide those kind of fail safes, where if those are triggered, the drone can come back and land, or you can set a emergency location where drone would go and land on a safe location. So this could be done with the rain, this could be done with the wind. There have been conditions where in case the weather system is not able to provide the data, don't let the drone take off, because the regulatory compliance is designed in such a way where you need to have weather situations. A lot of visual observation, visual observations are also required. So you can integrate CCTV cameras. The dock also has a camera on board, so you can get that live live video feed on the screen. Plus, you can have CCTV cameras looking at the dock, because a lot of regulatory permissions require you to have such kind of check done around it. Is the weather good around? Is the drone is the right shape and all of that? So these kind of integrations are available in FlytNow. So you can integrate, set thresholds, decide fail safes, integrate more cameras, and have much more holistic approach for a realistic security system.
Thanks, Achal. I will spend a couple of more minutes to take a few other questions. We are beyond time, but then quickly for Achal. There are a few questions around alarm integration. So there's a question from Gerard around the moment an intruder is spotted, what process is followed from the drone? Does it indicate to a central point of contact, such as a control center, or is there a dedicated reference?
Sure. So there are two methods, as we saw. Actually, we saw the automated one, but of course, most of the regulatory permissions do not allow you to have a fully automated right now. So as soon as it's detected, it'll give you a notification on the dashboard, right? So you have an alarm running there on the dashboard. You have to click that, approve the flight path, and send the drone. Now, this could be done in a matter of seconds itself. So hardly like less than 10 seconds. If you receive that, you can send that drone to that location. Now, if your regulatory permissions are there, you can set it in a fully automated mode. But as soon as it is there, it'll take time, prepare quickly the dock, and send drone automatically to that location. You would have a few seconds of window to abort the mission as a safety protocol, but the drone can automatically respond and go to that location really quick. I hope I was able to answer that question, right? Was there anything else to that question?
Achal, there's a follow-up question to it. That is, which automated actions can the system initiate? Can it switch the light on or play voice recording?
Right. So in a mission, you can set that. You'd have to, of course, pre-configure that in a mission where on a particular waypoint, go and do this. Go there, turn 360-degree around, take a picture, go to 90-degree, take a picture, go to another kind of a configuration and take a picture. Say you're securing particular points in a facility, security gate or specific weak points where you want to capture those images. So you can do that. You can of course have lights triggered if the drone supports that payload. If the drone supports a loudspeaker, you can play that. So we have a workflow manager in the mission planner, and that is where you can configure that.
Okay, Ben, we have a question for you. In the US, the FAA has banned the use of DJI drones. How is it in Europe? And is there a risk of it being banned in Europe as well?
So no, at the moment there is no bans in place for any DJI equipment. DJI have provided a number of security reports historically over the last few years, and so. Truth be told, we couldn't say what the future will hold, whether or not these discussions are going on. But certainly, the way that we're planning for the future, we're carrying on business as usual. Because at the end of the day, it's one of those factors where it's going to be discussed by organizations, security services, and governments rather than sort of at the lower level initially.
All right. And another question is around the maintenance of the DJI Dock, especially with regards to battery care. What does it look like?
Yeah, so the maintenance schedule for Dock isn't yet publicly released, but we ourselves, as a reseller, are currently undergoing a training for the Dock maintenance. So we can do maintenance in situ with DJI Dock, everything from routine servicing, repairs, and maintenance. So for users who are concerned about having to box up Dock and send it back for any repairs, absolutely not. We can repair that and do all the work we need to in situ.
Thanks, Ben. We have another question around. A couple of people have asked, what is the time from telling the M30 to take off to it being actually airborne? So the pre-flight procedure, how long does it typically take from your experience of testing it?
Yeah, so it depends on the workflow, really. If it's a pre-planned mission, then it's a case of selecting that mission. The system or the software will then run through the pre-flight checklists. As Achal said, it runs through system assurance checks to make sure it's completed its functional checks prior to takeoff. This process can be anywhere from 10 seconds up to, if you need to plan a flight mission, however long it takes you to plan that mission.
Thanks again, Ben. Achal, I think we have a couple of questions before we end this session around the software. So, what is the maximum range of the drone? Is the data captured in real and transmitted in real time? And how long can the drone make night flights as well?
Right. I think Ben would be able to answer that really well because using the hardware there. But yeah, from what I have been experiencing is you can. I think drone allows you to go up to 7 miles. It totally depends where you are. You can easily cover, I think, 1 to 2 miles of range with the Dock. And Ben, you can correct me if I'm wrong there, based on your understanding of flying DJI Dock in UK, and it totally depends on the geography and topography, right? So it's difficult to comment on a specific figure. There are things which we are now introducing in terms of a 5G payload on top of the drone, so you could get a better range in terms of directly transmitting the data with the PSDK that DJI provides. So you have an onboard module and you can directly transmit that. I think one of the questions was for the nighttime flying. So of course, I think the drone already has a beacon, which is required from the regulatory perspective to have night flight time. Plus, it has the thermal camera, the M30T, so you can stream the live thermal video feed directly to FlytNow. And as you can sync that data as soon as the drone lands, which could be uploaded to the cloud. But yeah, I'll let Ben add to this based on his experience.
No, very much so. You got your figure spot on. I have to caveat and say, whilst I think on the books the maximum transmission range within the UK is something like 8 kilometers for Dock. Obviously, under visual line of sight conditions, it is to a distance where the remote pilot can accurately ascertain the orientation of the aircraft. So that is the answer I'll go by, unless, of course, there are BVLOS exemptions or what we call authorizations in the UK, where it's whatever the agreement is with the National Aviation Authority. The next question was it flight time? I think was another question, which I think on the books is 41 minutes for the Matrice 30 series, but obviously this fluctuates based on environmental conditions and lots of other factors as well.
Thanks, Ben. I think the final question is around the price of the DJI Dock. Would you like to share any thoughts on that?
So that is the question on everyone's lips at the moment. So DJI, during their launch back in, I think it was March last year, they did give some indicative pricing, both in dollars and euro. We do know that price is not yet finalized, and it should be released in the next few weeks. So that's not available at the moment, but we'll be posting that onto our website as soon as we get more information.
Thanks again, Ben. So thanks both Achal and Ben for sharing all of those thoughts and answers and sharing this presentation with everyone out there. Before we close, Ben, do you have any final words?
So with Doc, you really have to think about things conceptually. It's very much early days. The statement I like to stick with is if you were trying to introduce motor vehicles today, given the risk model, the efficiencies, however, the outcome of having vehicles on our roads today and the amount of lives lost. Try thinking about it like that. It would be very difficult in today's environment to try and introduce this new technology. So small steps, we will get there. There is lots of plans afoot internationally and nationally to enable this type of technology. But stay tuned because things are moving very, very quickly.
Achal, do you have any final words before we close the curtain?
Yeah, first I'd like to thank Ben for his precious time here and sharing that insightful presentation with us. And thanks everybody for joining us today. As correctly said by Ben, I think it's more kind of a solution mindset that everybody has to take, where what kind of problem are we solving? What are the components that are required? So far, I think most of the folks are coming from the drone background, where it was just the drone and the pilot flying, and then you of course have a app where you post process the data later. But this is more of an integrated solution, right, in terms of not only the infrastructure that is required for connectivity, the B plus regulations, the safety, and everything has to be considered when deploying. And that is where you'd have to work with experts like Heligai, where they can help you with all of this and start with such kind of process and help you start deploying drone dogs for your use cases or for your customers' use cases. So, yeah, exciting times. Thank you for joining today. We also did a last webinar in case you want to learn more about FlytNow. Of course, today we covered a specific piece of it. If you want to learn more about it, you can go and check on our website and you will be able to find that. I'm also dropping my LinkedIn in case you like to connect. And Ben, if you have any coordinates that you can share, maybe we can drop it here really quick so where people can go, or they can just go to the website and contact you.
Absolutely.
Yes, that'll be great, Ben, if you could drop in your coordinates. And thank you again, everyone, for joining in today and making time amidst this the busy schedule. We exceeded by 15 minutes, but then I'm hoping you had a great time and could take away a lot of learnings from this webinar. Have an awesome day, everyone. Thank you again for joining in. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. Thank you, Ben.